All right, guys, thanks for joining me. So, ladies, I'm going to be talking about money today. I did watch a Dave Ramsey financial coaching video yesterday, and it's something that I may be looking into in the future. I think it's important for women to work on their finances, to always be learning, always be studying about your finances, to always be improving yourself and taking care of yourself in every single way that you can. So, I'm going to talk today about do not allow someone to co-sign for you. It's very rare that it's a good idea. Very rare. So, I'm sharing my stuff that I learned to help other women with finances in my minimalist channel. So, as a minimalist, um, I will, I talk about finances so women can afford their babies. So, what was it? It was a comment today I left somewhere, and someone said, I was talking about how I've been a homeschool mom. I'm a teacher, right? So high standards for a teacher. So she was like, I left something about homeschooling your kids because of the way the curriculum is set up in the schools. It's important that your voice is the most important to your child, that you have the time with them, that you give them all the time they need, because later on in life, you want them to have a good, strong foundation. So this person's like, oh, well, you're lucky, that you were able to do that. I have to stay home with my child, so I can't. And I get that. I get that. But at the same time, if something's important enough to you, you will make the sacrifice to do it. You will. So I felt really called to homeschool. I graduated early from high school. I'm somebody who is driven, somebody who is very diligent with my hands. I'm extremely productive. I go after what I want. I'm not lazy. I don't have a slack hand. And let's talk about the slack hand in finances. So, my husband left us pretty much with no plan of a home or anything when our landlord sold our place. He didn't want to work at it. That's probably the biggest problem right there. Not having a diligent hand, not wanting to work at things, not wanting to call your credit card companies, not wanting to deal with finances. You don't want to be somebody with that attitude. You want to take on things and get the help you need and do what you got to do to make it, right? So my mother-in-law had said, oh, why did you have 5 kids if you can't afford it? I don't think anyone can truly afford kids in a sense, because it depends on how you raise your kids, right? You can have one like she does who is very spoiled and she's still at home. As last I knew, like at 42 or something, she's still living off her parents. Or you can have kids that at 18, you're on your own, you are paying for things, and even before that, you're paying for some things. So my son actually does pay for a lot of his own food. He is very good with that stuff. If there's anything he wants, he buys it. So he's really good. And you teach your kids young. I taught all of them, about when you work, you're paying for some of the stuff you want, and then you're pitching in for some food, and you're doing this. So do not co-sign. And the reason why I say that is because when you think you have a good relationship with your in-laws and they offer to co-sign for you, and then hard times come, they don't, you become a Christian and they don't like it. You go to church and they tell your husband not to go, they really don't like him going to church. My husband was over there one day and he's like, I got to change my shirt. We're going to church. And he got the silent treatment because they don't like church. They just do hate the church. So she must have gotten hurt pretty bad, right? To not like church. So once you become a Christian, once you start mothering and you put your standards in and how you feel about things, all hell breaks loose basically. And now everything is an issue. So when they co-signed, all was good. And this mortgage was not even in my name. This was not even in my name. And I was blamed for everything rather than them taking responsibility for themselves in paying a mortgage that they co-signed on. So, we would go over there and I'd be like, well, we're getting behind on bills. We're getting behind on this and that. And they're like, oh, just do this, or just don't eat, have a grilled cheese, do this, do that. But they never picked up and said, how is the mortgage? What's going on with the mortgage? Are you behind? How's things going? So when my husband didn't want to pay for his mortgage, it was in his name, in his father's name. So I had already said, let's do a deferment, let's do this, let's do that. And, I was doing more than I should have. And I can tend to pick up more than I should because I'm such a hard worker. So he's like, look, they called him over, and instead of looking at themselves and saying, well, we haven't paid our mortgage that we co-signed for, or we still haven't paid the taxes that are in our name, they chose to blame it all on him and say, why didn't you tell us, and shame him. And he felt like he couldn't talk to his parents because every time he tries to talk to them, they don't listen to him. So instead they blame his wife, right? She's a gold digger and and they all come up against me. That took years to unravel that mess. That took years because trust was broken because he lied about me. He lied a lot. He lied about pornography. He lied about money. He lied. So the relationship started off good until that happened. Then divorce was introduced into the conversation. He came home, he got some money from his parents. I had no idea about it. They're like, don't tell her about it. We're going to take care of your electric bill. Instead of letting us call the electric company and deal with stuff. His mother thinks she's like thinks she's married to her son or something. I don't know. So she thinks her hand should be involved in our marriage. So I actually I sensed, and this is where my discernment comes in, I sensed it, that he was hiding money. I sensed it. So I went into his car, went into the glove box, found like $1,000 or something like that for him to hide. And he had come home and he had said, I said, how'd it go over your parents? And he's like, don't even talk to me. I'm like, what? Don't even talk to me. I don't know if I'm divorcing you. I'm like, what are you talking about? And he's like, I don't know if I want to be married to you anymore. So this stuck with our marriage for a long time because I was like, okay, I will tolerate them when I go over, but I'm not going to ever be close to them again. And she tried to make it up to us and brought us to, some Boston Aquarium. We went there. She tried to control us and pay for it. And my heart was not there after that. And after a while, I said, okay, we're not coming over as much. We got our own family. She didn't like it. So she told the whole town of Epsom lies about me, Facebook lies about me, on and on. So because a mother-in-law cannot control her son and wife, she has deliberately done a lot of things to get control. So don't co-sign. I mean, even if you think everything's okay. So it's when the relationship seemed to be okay again in her eyes, she gave her son money to buy a truck. We always paid it back at income tax time. She what else? Helped with a van we needed. And he went to his parents for money all the time. When they were upset, they would pull out that weapon again and be like, oh, we're not your bank. And, so it was a really unhealthy relationship. And then when we moved out of the trailer that was falling apart, 23 years I put up with my husband not wanting to listen about the finances. He wanted me to stay home, but he didn't want to take care of us financially. So that's kind of like a catch-22. What do? He doesn't want to go out and work. You're like, look, there's not enough money in this budget. We're barely making it. I remember counting pennies to make it with the food. And he didn't care. I mean, I remember working my tail off, making sure I worked hard on the budget, only to have him turn around and lie about me to his parents. He knew how hard I was working on the budget too. I'd be like, look, I only got $3. We need some meat. We need this. We need that. Look, the kids need some clothes. I will go to Walmart and get them some. I go to the Goodwill store, and they shared clothes. So it's not like we brought clothes much. So he didn't want to help. He did not want to help his own family, his own flesh and blood. He didn't care. It was just, I work, here. It doesn't matter that I'm working 3 times below the poverty level. This is my job. I go to work every day. I work, not that he worked hard. He wouldn't, I'm the one who said, look, get your ASC test. He did, and then he would not renew them. He just felt like he had a job. He had a job, and that's enough. And it really isn't. There's a lot of in-between stuff that you have to deal with. So, here I am with 5 kids in a home that he just left us pretty much without wanting to lift a finger. But he would want his steak, and he would want, he'd want his toys. He'd want the go-kart. He'd want a motorcycle and all this stuff. So, basically when you co-sign, it's the people who co-signed who are responsible for making sure that their credit is taken care of, and that, they have communication good enough with their son to take care of things. So if their son wouldn't listen when he was in school, why do you think he's going to listen now? So they had a lot of issues with him not wanting to do homework, not wanting to listen, being at the principal's office all the time. So I never had these issues with my kids. Never, ever, ever had major issues with my kids. Like, even when I went through a hard time with one of them who really fell in life hanging around with the wrong people, it still is a relationship that's intact. I mean, I'm close to all my sons, so, and that's without even really doing a whole lot. I mean, I don't get in their life. I don't get, once your son is married, that's it. It's his decisions, what he's doing. And, you can give your advice before marriage, but once you're married, that's it. And my father, when I had gone to him once for help, they did buy a water heater, but then he's like, it's not my problem. And I think it's very wise to be like that sometimes and say, hey, it's not my problem. You're married, you're on your own. And I never went back to my parents to cry to them. I never went to them for help. I never said, hey, could you, I think once I said, can I borrow a little bit of money? Like I don't know, it was very little. Like my mother let me borrow, I think 100 or something. I don't know, it was very little, but that was it. So that's what she said. You're married, no more. So when you're trying to do everything for your husband, and I also worked, and I also did some shoveling, and I did some, side hustles to help my husband. Realize after all that you've done, making phone calls, taking care of his cancer, calling the landlord when he took the trailer. I had to call my landlord and say, look, we need to wheel and deal. We got a trailer falling apart. He's like, I'm going to give you a deal. I'm going to give you, while we were in our new place, he's like, I'm going to give you a month's rent off if you give me this trailer and let me deal with it. And I'm like, yeah, thank you so much. We wheeled and dealed. My husband wouldn't deal with him. There was still a lien on the trailer from when I did get help years ago with rent and everything and electric that had to be taken care of. And his parents shamed Ben again for not taking care of that. And that was something that, because the trailer was still in their name after it was paid for, that it had to be taken care of, and they didn't want to take care of the taxes. So that's kind of how it is. And now, my husband's trying to blame me for, not knowing where his finances are, when he's had every opportunity to talk to me and talk about everything. And in fact, I said to him too, I'm taking this credit card to pay off this credit card. And he was fine with everything up until he wanted a divorce. And yesterday I met up with someone, and she's like, what did your husband do? You're kidding me. Have you forgiven him for all this? I mean, how can you forgive somebody for doing all this to you? And I'm like, yeah, I forgive. And why do you forgive? I'm like, well, the first time was hard enough to deal with when he betrayed me. I mean, we were like best friends, and he betrayed me with his family. I'm like, that took like 5 or 6 years to get over. That was that was one of the hardest things I went through in my marriage, to have someone you love in a family that you love come up against you and think the worst of you. And I'm like, so now, I just don't care. It doesn't matter to me. I don't care. So she's like, oh my goodness. And she's like, do you even love him anymore? I'm like, yeah, I love him, but I'm not in love with him anymore. So that's the difference. And she's like, and you forgive him? How? And I'm like, because God forgives me every single day. So why would I not forgive him? And she's like, why did you marry him in the first place? I'm like, I think I married him because he listened to me. That was important to me, that he listened. And so we had an interesting talk yesterday. And, when your husband doesn't want to, be part of your life and do his part and then turn around and blame you, you just got to let him go. And this divorce should be over pretty soon, and I will let him go happily. When I was living in the house and he was like, I'm going to kick your ass and everything, I prayed and I'm like, God, get me out of this situation. And he did. He allowed my husband's heart to be turned against me. And then since I've been here, I'm like, okay, God, do you still want me to try to work things out with him? Or do you want me not to? And like today, it's like, yeah, no, he's gone too far. He's on the path of destruction. Let him go. So he can go live his life and maybe one day regret that he had a good woman and didn't appreciate her and chose to be married to his mother. That's what this lady said. She's like, is he married to his mother? What's the matter with him? Doesn't he have his own mind? I'm like, he should. So that's the way it is, guys. Don't ever let someone co-sign for you. Never.